technology, identifying and eliminating business constraints with AI.
Morning. Thanks for coming in this morning. I know everybody's had a busy conference week, so appreciate you guys coming in. A lot of travel days today. So what we'll do is we'll probably do a condensed version of the PowerPoint. Don't want you guys to get PowerPointed to death. And then our Chief Technology Officer is here as well. I'm Spencer Askew, the CEO and founder of Technology. And so we'll open up for more Q&A and kind of do maybe some roundtables. That way I can kind of just come off stage and answer any questions that you guys might have that may be stimulated from the overall presentation. So just a little bit about our business. So we've been a supply chain software company in the industry since 2005. So we've seen quite a few movies kind of play out through the industry. We've worked with a lot of real data, real clients on a global scale. And fortunate this year, Gartner named our business Cool Vendor. We're not exactly sure what that means yet. We're one of 4, I think, tech companies across the supply chain to be awarded that kind of title. And really maybe what it means is their analysts have spent a lot of time looking at our product. So as we talk about AI and really the relevant and the day-to-day practical uses of not just solving math problems. So a lot of AI tools kind of start unpacking density and warehouse distribution and trailer capacity. And really that's just kind of solving math problems. And what we really designed the platform to do is help companies solve business problems. Because if we can focus on solving business problems, then we can start contributing to profitability in your P&L, up and down your supply chain, as well as other divisions in the company. And so from an analyst perspective, I think they've spent a lot of time looking at our system, talking to customers, use cases, references. And so I think that kind of culminates into the cool vendor topic. And we've got some cool developers, so I feel like we're fairly cool in some scenarios. So today there's really 2 topics that we wanted to cover. One is just how can software help companies grow their revenue? When we think about supply chains really throughout the world, typically it's a cost center for most organizations, and shipping is definitely not free, even though Amazon has kind of created that kind of merge in the industry where shipping is free. Consumers expect shipping to be free, but as we all know, it's a tremendous cost against the P&L. And so how can we leverage technology to actually not just identify and eliminate business constraints, but if we can do that, then we're going to find dollars in the business up and down the supply chain and recontribute that back into the organization. And then when we think about, well, how do we accomplish that, we looked across the market and felt like that there just needed to be a better method. There's a mindset. I'll introduce some concepts that we introduced to the industry a couple of years ago. But this idea of a warehouse management system, a TMS, transportation management system, your ERP systems, accounting software. So if you think about those tools that are helping to run the business and the users that are interacting with those tools, we just ask ourselves one real big broad question, and then we started building a tech solution around this one big broad question. And the question was, is the solution, is my software smarter than the person who potentially may leave the company and retire or take a higher paying job? And so within the supply chain, there's a tremendous amount of knowledge. We call it head knowledge, and it's experience where, depending on if you're a shipper, manufacturer, e-commerce, e-tailer, if you're in the trucking side of the industry, you've just learned a lot. You've learned your business processes, you've learned your organization, you've learned your suppliers, you've learned your carriers, and a lot of that remains in the heads of the staff members. And so we wanted to create a solution and a platform that could harness knowledge from all the resources and allow that to live into the DNA of the software, and in turn harnessing other industry expertise into the platform to help really enable the organization to go further faster. And so we kind of think about that as a better method. As we kind of go through the overview, one thing to contemplate, so when we talk about software and a platform, we also recognize that companies aren't necessarily in a position to go through some transformation, digital transformation projects, kind of long drawn out, feels like you're climbing Mount Everest. We also contemplate that software that you've had in your company for the last 5, 10, 15 years to just rip and replace that is almost impossible as well. And so the technical design, and with our CTO being in the room, the technical design around the platform is so that it can integrate and upgrade pre-existing software without impacting your actual workflow in the system, meaning we're able to take data, move it to a data lake, analyze the data, and then present that back contextually in what we call advisor cards. And I'll show you a bit more around that in just a few minutes. And so as you think about a software platform that can make your life better and make your company better and impact your company's P&L, we have a platform that will neutrally integrate to any of your legacy supply chain software. And it's quite IT friendly as well. So, as we think about why we exist, it's really to identify and remove business constraints. So if you think about that, some companies call them bottlenecks, some companies call them staff members that need to be fired, whatever you want to call the business constraint. But it may be a process constraint, data constraint, lack of visibility into data. A lot of talk about data and the value sitting in data. But, again, aside from just solving a math problem with your data, how do you contextualize what's occurring? So instead of bits and bytes in the depths of your source data, what's really occurring in the business? What are things and areas that need improvement in a proactive way versus reactionary? And unfortunately, our supply chains, a lot of them are still quite reactionary in nature, just due to the lack of, in a lot of cases, connectivity across the globe in terms of all the people who have a hand or any products that touch your supply chain. And so from what we do, the acronym AI is up on the board, but we really talk about AI in the term of applied intelligence, not just artificial intelligence, because again, artificial is, can the machine run your company? Chances are no. But you have a lot of people, you have a lot of smart people that are running your company, and you have software that they're interacting with. So if you could really merge the knowledge from the people and the software to help you make better decisions and more proactive decisions and contextualize those decisions, then you have applied intelligence. So it's a merger of machine learning plus your user intelligence and their activity and all of the knowledge that they bring to the table inside the organization. The automation component, again, there's a lot of talk about visibility and automation. I think they're the two most talked about topics in the industry still. I think companies are still, from an outbound, inbound perspective, all up and down the supply chain. Visibility throughout the supply chain still remains a critical path forward for most organizations. And so when you think about automation, as you kind of see the other products that we've created in the industry, we look at integration between suppliers as well as your carriers that you do business with, whether they're asset or non-asset, to really create a lot of that visibility and some hands-off operational capabilities as well. And then how we do what we do is through our TIE platform. Again, it's the applied intelligence methodology. It's not just purely artificial. And then, as mentioned earlier, we introduced a new acronym to the industry about 2 years ago, called an LES. So what this represents is a logistics expert system. So if you kind of go back to your organization and you start looking at your software, no matter how many different systems you have currently running your business, if you look at each system and you try and contemplate, is this system smart? Is this system intelligent? Is this system actually helping my staff members make better decisions so we don't have to have management calls or bring them into a training class and retrain them on things that we thought they understood in terms of how to run our supply chain? And so if you as you look at your software, and if the answer is my system is presenting me information, but my system is not as an extension of my resources helping me actually execute on intelligent decisions, then we think there's a better method for that. And we like to have a hand and think that we've had a hand in kind of creating a shift in our industry so that we can, through our TIE platform, help upgrade legacy software so it becomes a logistics expert system, not just a pretty cool system that may have several integrations and feeding some control tower from a visibility standpoint. So, as we kind of go through, a lot of people say, well, great, you guys kind of went through an overview, but, what are your products? We buy products. We love solutions and we love innovation, but we need a product because we need a product to make our company operate more efficiently. And so I figured I'd kind of go through what we kind of call helping clients climb Mount Everest. It seems intimidating, but when you kind of break it down by base camps and you have your teams working together. So as I mentioned, we got our start in the industry back in '05. And so when we did that, our initial start as a tech company was from a TMS perspective. And so as we started working with more and more clients, one of the things that we recognize is that there's a lot of TMS software in the industry, but there's a lot of point solution TMS software, meaning that doesn't necessarily encompass all modes of shipping. So when you think about a supply chain, it absolutely encompasses all these various modes, less than truckload. In the world of e-commerce, the whole cartage and white glove home delivery component has now created and posed some challenges for asset carriers. But also from a technology perspective, we need to have the capabilities to grant visibility across all of these modes. And then as we've evolved the business, one of the things that we wanted to give all of our TMS clients was a fully automated experience, meaning when you have a system that's digesting a massive amount of POs coming in from an ERP system, you need a system that can auto-rate and auto-route that shipment and start managing your least cost routing. You also need a system that can help you manage kind of a carrier or supplier routing guide, the vendors that you do business with based on your procurement strategy. And so that led us down the path of building this really broad and really deep automation stack. And the methods of integration that we support with between, say, your business, your supplier community, and your asset carriers and your non-asset carriers to centralize all of that information and create a digital work environment for you is via EDI, API, and XML. So there's a lot of chatter around API as kind of the automation of the future. Well, the trucking side of the industry, the asset carriers, their infrastructure wasn't so ready because those are old systems as well. But EDI is a staple as an integration method if you need to audit all of your shipping bills that you receive from freight forwarders or 3PLs, brokers and or asset carriers. That's a big method. And so when you think about kind of climbing the mountain, having a really good multi-mode TMS with integration capabilities across the board with all the companies that you do business with, and then ultimately kind of feeding into your overall supply chain visibility and your execution capabilities. And then, again, we started designing this intelligence component. So a few years ago, we went through kind of a complete rewrite of our platform, kind of a painful process, but necessary. And with that, started embedding into the DNA of the platform our TIE capabilities or our applied intelligence. And so as we think about real-world data, how do we create business solutions, not just solve math problems, to me, that's really where we've kind of built our TIE advisors and our TIE platform to communicate. And then, as we kind of get to the pinnacle, one of the things that we've kind of presented to Gartner and working with their analysts, and they haven't necessarily told us to stop talking to them about this, and hence the kind of cool vendor award. But with the whole concept and the mindset of taking your current supply chain software and turning that into an expert system with machine learning capabilities, not just in a certain area of your business, but across all of your departments, across all of your software systems, is a different method of thinking. And it sometimes could be kind of intimidating, but we've tried to create a scenario that could quite simplify moving your organization down that path. And, from an industry shift perspective, we've also looked at the quadrants. And as we think about the legacy TMS quadrant, the WMS quadrant, and we think about the players and the movement and the technology that is available for a lot of the organizations, we've also recognized that companies are kind of sick and tired of paying heavy professional services fees. So if you do see a new cool tool or a new widget, again, the gating factor is we've got so much software running our supply chain. How do we yet make another investment to add yet more dollars to this cost center that we're trying to actually streamline, automate, drive cost out, and drive business value? And so, from that perspective, we also recognize, and we've heard from clients, that, there's an appreciation level that we've built technology. We're not a professional services company, so we don't use tools or widgets to try and suck our customers into consulting engagements. We're kind of the direct opposite fan of that. And we just feel like we've built something that people need to use and apply to their business, and we're there to help them do that. And so So just kind of getting into a little bit of the architecture of TIE. The three main things that TIE will do for your business: analyze data, advise your users to make more proactive, more intelligent decisions, and help your organization execute on some of those recommendations. So if you think about really just a system administrator even that may or may not have access to all of your supply chain software, if there are certain things that even a BI tool surfaces that, hey, here's something going on in your data, that still requires a team of people or a person and a resource to go into whatever that system is to, as an administrator, make those changes and execute on whatever that data is suggesting to you. That's kind of tells you what happened last week. AI really kind of gives you visibility and insight into what's going to occur 30 days from today in your supply chain. And our platform will actually take some of those recommendations and actually help you start executing across your various systems in a proactive way. And so really it's all about solving business problems and driving money to your P&L. So when we set out with the tool, again, kind of given our background in the industry for so long and the clients that we've worked with and the various data issues and supply chain issues and challenges and opportunities, one of the things that we did is we started harnessing from clients and just from our own expertise in the industry what we call consulting intelligence. So if you think about companies that are looking for process maturity, you typically may hire an Accenture, Deloitte, IBM Consulting. So there's all these various consulting firms that have a footprint in the supply chain industry. So what we've tried to do is actually digitize, for example, a consultant's workbook. So the reason maybe Coca-Cola would hire a Deloitte is maybe they had some expertise with some of their competition. So they're hiring that expertise that, hey, we've been down this road with other clients, come in and help us solve business problems and improve our P&L. And so the consulting intelligence is really a digital consultant. So think of TIE as a digital consultant that's not charging you per hour, but TIE is not also leaving in 6 months, kind of leaving it with you. And so when you deploy the solution across your various supply chain software, you can maintain this level of consulting intelligence. The other area is, in line with the applied intelligence kind of method of thinking, is user intelligence. So companies typically harness knowledge through non-compete agreements. We want to help you harness your staff members' knowledge through an actual tool and a software application. And so the user intelligence is just a scenario where we've created a self-service component to the TIE platform so that if there's anything you're thinking about as a manager, wherever you sit in the organization, whatever department, if you want TIE to focus on something for your business, you think there's an area of consolidation opportunity, but different than a pure, perfect world optimizer from some TMS. But if there's any business topic, we need to collect money better, we need to pay our suppliers better, we need to make sure that suppliers aren't sending us ghost invoices. Did they really do their job? How do we digitize all of the information coming to us from a supplier? And so anything that you can think of that you feel like your business could take advantage of as an opportunity to improve, you can log into the self-service portal and you can teach TIE what to focus on from an analyzation standpoint, and you can also transfer your knowledge directly into the platform and how you would want to advise maybe the 30 subordinates that report into you as a manager within your department or your area of the business. And so the user intelligence is where you can make TIE smarter just from the people in your organization up front. You don't have to necessarily wait on TIE through the machine learning capability to start learning your data and learning your staff members' decisions, although that is a component. So we kind of see that as the three pillars that make the tool valuable on an ongoing basis. And so as we kind of jump into just a little more technical aspect for any IT folks, but if you go back to your IT department. So we've evolved the platform to contemplate really the three areas. The most basic component and the human element is just supervised machine learning. Pretty standard. A lot of companies are deploying certain ML experiments into their environment for certain business topics, very kind of siloed in nature. The TIE platform, think of this as kind of a .NET environment that allows you to build on top of it to deploy and apply all of our capabilities around machine learning and a lot of the consulting and user intelligence into the DNA. And then, so as we've evolved the system, as we consume more and more data within the organization, And this would occur inside of your environment where there's the semi-supervised, which is kind of a human plus a machine, where the machine made a recommendation, but the human is still a little bit smarter than the machine. And it's a constant merger of that application of intelligence between human and machine. And then eventually, in certain areas, certain business departments, there's the unsupervised capabilities where from just an advisor card, Ty starts producing recommendations that a human doesn't even have to author the text associated to that business recommendation to drive improvements in your supply chain. So, and as we kind of merge into, so how do we think about setting Ty up? How intrusive or non-intrusive? One of the things that we really kind of showcase, and as we work with IT departments to really show them how we deploy Ty within legacy software. So one thing that we're showcasing here is that we make an assumption. We've yet to see any client that we've worked with that runs their entire supply chain on one software platform. So what that means is you have different source data. Companies have created, in some cases, control towers where they're trying to feed data into, old school word data warehouse, more into a data lake. And so as we think about pre-existing systems and environments, there's a lot of companies have a TMS, a lot of companies have a warehouse management system, they have an ERP, they have some accounting system, and typically they could be different independent systems. Point here is your users, the people who are running your supply chain, most likely don't have admin access into all the systems that are driving data. And within that data, there's golden nuggets of value. So we've got to mine those golden nuggets and help you quantify and actually execute and convert that back into P&L contribution. And so in a most basic scenario, this is kind of something we do in proof of concepts for our clients. So rather than us trying to fully explain applied intelligence and why should I care and why should we implement it, typically what we do is we'll engage with organizations through a proof of concept that doesn't cost the organization any money. So there's maybe areas of your supply chain where you think, hey, if I had a cool new widget or this whole AI buzz that's going on in the industry, if I could apply that and test it out in this area of the business, and if there's value there, maybe I could go to one other area of the business and try it there and deploy it here. So we're not boiling the ocean, and we're not coming in and you're not having to pay professional services fees to actually deploy the tool to see it working in your environment in a real world case scenario. So something that we offer to potentially, essentially everybody we talk to, because again, we know the platform works and creates value, and that's why, we're not in the business of doing things for free, so we know it'll turn into a monetized relationship. But again, we don't want to spend 6 months trying to have everybody digest or really figure out what AI really means to the company and how can this impact our P&L and profitability. And so this kind of scenario here in the workflow is you have source data, and we get that data exported into a Ty data lake. The analyzers from Ty carry consulting intelligence. You can infuse your own user intelligence during the POC. You can tell Ty what you care about, what you want the application and the tool to focus on. And then from there, Ty is going to digest the data, contextualize the data, and then we're going to present what we call advisor cards back inside of your TMS to the users on a department level based on their user permissions within your legacy TMS or within your WMS or your ERP. So from a user provisioning standpoint, the tool is advising the users that are on a need to know and I have a permission to know basis, which the idea there is how can we have all of our staff members making intelligent decisions and making proactive decisions. So that just kind of creates a perpetual loop, from that standpoint. So here I'll that's really mainly what we wanted to cover, I think, just in the talk track. And I think we've got some time left here, and I know people have planes to catch and so forth. So with that, I may come off stage and maybe we could roundtable if anybody has any questions, or we can ask questions to the group while I'm here. And I can't actually show the application. I think he said that the computer here has internet. It's not my machine, but I'm sure I could figure it out while we go through a Q&A if you guys wanted to see some of the advisor cards and what that means contextually. So I'll kind of open up the floor, and if you guys have any questions, and appreciate your time for sure. Yes, sir.
Question is around systems you're deploying here, is that on-prem or off-prem? Does that require IT data to transfer outside of the environment it's in, an external environment?
Good question. So it's a cloud-based solution, but from a data perspective, from a data warehouse, data lake standpoint, it is something that could operate. If you guys have a data lake set up in your world, we can deploy our analyzers into that behind your firewall, so to speak. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So it's clearly targeted towards logistics, but you mentioned supply chain and ERP and other areas. Visioning, getting into other areas besides logistics?
We have, yeah. So our company expertise has really been around supply chain, but when you think about supply chain, it touches so many areas of an organization, not just from a cost perspective. So a lot of the analyzers and a lot of the pre-built intelligence into TIE applies to business. So we talk a lot about profitability improvement and P&L management. So one thing we haven't seen a whole lot, or at least we haven't heard a whole lot of software companies talking about that do address our industry, is just pure P&L and budget management. So when you think about staff cost and, a lot of tech companies talk about capacity improvements, but if that software platform doesn't know your budget for the 10 people that we allowed you to redeploy in other areas of the company, how can we really actually give you real world information around capacity improvements? And so it really is it's a business solution. We apply it to supply chain because we've got a lot of pre-built machine learning experiments that essentially impact a supply chain in an intelligent way that a lot of companies do care about, and they don't have the time to sit in a conference room whiteboarding and what should we have this tool think about and how should we train this tool. And so that kind of gives you a jump start. We say that TIE has an MBA in both business and supply chain, but when the machine learning kicks in, the platform starts getting a doctorate level degree based on your data, based on your company and your business processes. So one of the things that you would see in the tool, kind of in a POC, is that there are elements of TIE that you could deploy specifically into your accounting department. Has nothing to do necessarily with freight moving in and out of a warehouse, but ultimately that ends up touching your accounting department to determine if you have carriers submitting incorrect bills and how many invoice corrections or bill corrections you may receive from those carriers. And so, sales department, are we cross-selling? If you have an e-commerce platform plus brick and mortar, are we capturing where people are abandoning items on a shopping cart and then they show up for in-store pickup? Can we have the local guy with some intelligence to try and upsell what they abandoned online? And so it's really more of a business application. One big company that started deploying, we have a mobile solution. They felt like their suppliers were sending them ghost invoices, and so they were leveraging our mobile solution to actually GPS coordinate the suppliers to make sure that the supplier was in fact where they were supposed to be. Had nothing to do with the shipment, nothing to do with supply chain, but it was just business management. So we were able to digitize that part of their business through a mobile solution, and then obviously an AI platform cares about consuming data and a lot of data to then make recommendations. And they were able to make some supplier changes, from that. So yeah, we do envision that we don't tout it as an overall company solution, but it does address every major business division or department with some intelligence there. Yeah. What do we build the platform on? We're a Microsoft shop. Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Do you also capture the real-time data? Because physical information, real-time snapshots, events in that software.
We do both, yeah. So a lot of times we set up data schedules to make sure that either a data push or pull on the pre-existing infrastructure for the client. So we kind of work with the IT department, and there's real-time data that are critical elements to some of the analyzation and recommendations, and then there's kind of the 24-hour push and pull of data that kind of flows through the cycle to reposition the advisor cards on a daily basis. Yeah. Good question. So depending on the definition of source data, but typically we consume real-time data if the customer's infrastructure has the ability to provide that. But again, we would hone in on what data topics would be necessary for TIE to process and analyze in real time versus data that we would consume on a batch basis to run through the analytics there. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, we appreciate you guys coming in this morning. If you have any, oh, sorry, yeah, there's a question there.
Can you give one or two examples of customer use cases?
Yes. So we had a big customs broker that they're connected to a lot of systems on a global scale because as a customs broker, you're seeing supply chain movements for a lot of different entities. And so they wanted to get into the business of becoming kind of a non-asset broker for the freight side. And so an example there is they were connected or weren't necessarily connected. We helped them connect to various purchase order management systems way upstream in a supply chain to create predictability for carriers who are looking for, capacity. So we were able to marry upstream volume to downstream capacity by the visibility components. And then TIE was able to advise the carrier and the upstream customer on kind of a matchmaking through kind of a digital marketplace environment where when you think about that amount of data and that amount of volume of shipment activity moving on an international basis in and out of North America across all countries. And so we kind of just sat TIE right in the middle of all of that data processing and let TIE analyze the carrier behavior, the shipper behavior, the broker behavior to learn and essentially digitally match make the best relationships from a routing perspective to drive cost out of multiple companies' supply chains where this customs broker just kind of sat in the middle of that example. And so one other use case is we've worked from the carrier side. So we work from the shipper side and the carrier side. So our kind of vision and goal is shippers kind of play Heisman to their data to the carriers that they do business with. But the clients that we've seen that drive most costs out of their supply chain collaborate the best between their data, their shipment activity, and their supply chain, as well as all of their logistics service providers. And so we work with both sides of the industry, both shipper and the carrier side, and then the third-party logistics side. And so, accounting is a big topic for a lot of organizations. Cash flow is kind of just a big business topic for most entities. And so we helped one company from a DPO management, their accounts payables management, fully automate their bill management, and then we've improved their DPOs by multiple days. And then from a collection perspective for, say, a third-party logistics provider, really improve their accounts receivable just because they've got a machine learning the behavior of all of their customers and what it takes to collect money from each individual customer in terms of system automated follow-up versus a human collector, maybe emailing and calling once a week, where for one particular customer to pay their invoice on time, they need 3 emails and 3 phone calls a week. So TIE figures that out just like a human could kind of through trial and error figure that out, but then TIE can also generate the automation around the emailing and the voice calling out to the customer as well. It's a great question. We call that art and science project internal to our team. And so the science is the pure machine. The art component is that user intelligence, the real world expertise, and the real world kind of use cases. And so trust component within our design is a key element. And the way we create trust for the contextualization of TIE's recommendations is essentially through our TIE Advisor card. So within your, say, TMS or WMS, there would be a tie button. And it would be, again, on a user provision basis. So if I worked in operations, if I saw the tie button and it was blinking at me, I would click that button. And then I would see advisor cards from tie, which are recommendations after tie has analyzed data, contextualized the data, and now it's presenting, hey, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I recommend, what would you like me to do? Well, Ty, I don't agree with what you're saying. I'm going to ignore this for right now. So obviously that's logged. Ty's going to see if the decision was made by the user. And so we designed the interaction with Ty with the trust factor in mind, knowing that the machine can get it right a lot of the times, but we also want applied intelligence. So we want the user to interact with Ty and kind of boss Ty around to say, I don't agree with this recommendation, go away. Okay, I agree with the next recommendation. And so some organizations, their users, when Ty says, I can take care of this for you from now on, do you now trust me, essentially? So there's a literal question on the advisor card where the user always has that capability to either let Ty just execute an intelligent plan and then report back on, hey, I saw these 3 things in your supply chain. I went ahead and took action on it. I reached out to a supplier via email, whatever the case may be. Here's how we did. Here's the improvement that we saw, and report back. But that trust factor is a huge element. That's a phenomenal question, and that was a big part of our CTO's design too, was making sure that we allowed users to interact with the tool to build that trust and improve it.
Instead of just allowing me as a user to override a recommendation, do you give me a chance to see the features of the way
We do. That's right. That's right. So we give you kind of a quick snippet. It's kind of like a mini dashboard on the advisor card. And then if you want to drill into what's driving that recommendation, you can hit a link. It'll drive in so you can kind of unpack the thinking behind that recommendation to see if you agree with the logic or not. Great, really good questions. Really applicable. Awesome. Well, if there are no more questions, I think we're good, and we'll kind of hang out if you guys have any more questions. We definitely appreciate your time, and let us know if we can help you. Thanks.
Thank you for listening. Please visit Gartner.com/events for a list of upcoming events.